made it. I am last, I promise, and then you can go to the bar and do whatever you like. But I am here to talk to you about sustainability attributes in the retail landscape. So I feel quite confident about my time in retail, but I imagine most of you are wondering why somebody who works in the cosmetics space is up here and talking to you. And before I forayed into the cosmetics area, I worked with grocery retailers on their responsible sourcing programs, primarily in coffee. So working in their sourcing and communication of their investment in the supply chain, how they were working potentially with certifications, or how they were looking to really work with their producers to give their consumers an option to engage with the mass customization or the different attributes that they really care about. I think what's also really important to consider is that when we're looking at the engagement with the consumer, you have to tell the full story. And so this is me before the pandemic, speaking with a Peruvian coffee farmer, and what he shared with me was rather disappointing and saddening, but maybe not surprising. He was one of the few coffee farmers remaining. Most of his neighbors had burnt down their coffee farms and were switching to cocaine. Cocaine is where the money is, and this is twofold disappointing and depressing and scary. One, obviously a switch to producing drugs, but secondarily, from an environmental perspective, burning down your land is really deforestation, and that's a huge thing as we think about climate change and the challenges that we're facing in today's world. We are living in a crazy world. Unprecedented times. I don't have to explain what's happened to the past 3 years to any of us. And in that, we see an overwhelming amount of negative news, whether it be social, environmental, political, really anything. What we're being bombarded with on a daily basis is too much for us to handle. It's kind of like we're in a constant fight or flight, and we don't know how to react to it. And with that, when we receive this much information that is generally negative and generally difficult to digest, we're just stuck. We don't know how to process it, and then when we start to process it, we get lost. And so this gives a huge opportunity for fake news and different kinds of misinformation that we don't really know what to make of. So 2 examples that I have here on the slide. One is related to the Twitter blue checkmark example. If anyone uses Twitter, there was a thing a couple months ago where Twitter instituted a subscription model. So a blue checkmark means you're a valid and real account, and some fake accounts took advantage of that. In this transition time, a fake account for Eli Lilly, the pharmaceutical company, came on board, and they said, hey everybody, insulin is free. What did that do to the real Eli Lilly? It made their stock plummet. It made them have an actual business implication, and this was all due to fake news. So that's one true example. Another, and one that's close to my heart, is in the sustainability space. So what we see often is sustainability messaging that doesn't necessarily tell the whole picture. So Alaska Airlines came out a few months ago saying, we're cupping away. We are the first US airline to move away from plastic cups. Yippee! That's awesome. They're moving away from plastic, as many other organizations are. But what this picture over here shows is they moved to paper. What they didn't discuss, and what most of us in this room can probably think about, is that paper cups have liners. Paper cups are going to go straight into the landfill because they cannot be recycled because of their plastic liners. And this was not part of the communication, the trade-off that was being made going from that plastic to that paper alternative. And without that additional layer of information, it's super challenging for a consumer to make sense of that. So what do we see? We see consumers really leaning into voting with their dollar to retake the narrative and to control that negativity and to invest in the things that they care about, whether that be social, environmental, or both. Consumers want to vote with their dollar and really purchase with purpose to support the brands or the products or the missions that they really care about. What we notice, and very similar to the mass customization, because sustainability in a sense is mass customization, brands that are leaning into sustainable marketing are gaining brand loyalty in a way that conventional brands are not. Consumers are researching the different attributes of the products that they're interested in. And this is amazing because when consumers are researching, it gives brands the opportunity to control the narrative. If you can control the narrative, you can provide that additional layer of information and educate your consumers on the things that matter most. If we think back to that Peruvian coffee farmer, you can say, hey, I'm purchasing fair trade or direct trade coffee, but also here's the story as why that matters and how I'm helping farmers stay in coffee. That's something you can do. And what's really exciting to me is that consumers say the main places they're looking for that information is on a digital place or on pack. We know that on pack you have about 2 inches. You can't really tell your full story, but the real estate that you have online is quite large, and you should take that up. You should use that to your advantage and really tell the full story to your consumers. What we also see is that sustainable products represent a very small amount of market, but the amount that they're growing compared to their conventional counterparts is huge. And that's something that's super possible to take advantage of and to lean into. The last thing I'll leave you with before I move on is that according to a Nielsen IQ panel, a household survey that they did at the end of 2022, the sustainable shopper is no longer just what we normally would think about. So it's not, the high educated, high income, potentially a family with children. Sustainable shoppers are everyone, whether that be because in the past 3 years we've all started to think about where the products that we use are coming from or what we care most about and how we want to, again, invest our time and money. We are no longer looking at a sustainable niche shopper. A sustainable shopper expands across all of North America. So, the other opportunity for brands and retailers is that trust in government is exceptionally low. According to the Edelman Trust Barometer, we see that businesses are about 10 points more trusted than government, and this is a huge opportunity for businesses to step in and educate and empower and engage with consumers in a way that governments aren't stepping up to the plate. So, one way that you can really engage with your consumer if you have a sustainability team and a lot of resources is to write out a sustainability report. This is a lot of time and effort, but what this really offers is that prime real estate to provide transparency and engagement with your stakeholders, consumers, stockholders, internal associates. And so I'm really proud of the inaugural ESG report that Bath & Body Works actually just launched 2 weeks ago. And in this report, we talk about work that our safety and regulatory team has been doing for the past few years, but has never previously communicated to our consumers. What's exciting about this partnership with USDA bio-based certification is that we're looking to use more renewable materials, and we partnered with a third-party certification to confirm the work that we're doing, to validate externally, and have an independent assessment on the work that we're doing, as opposed to just saying, hey, we're using better materials. A testament to this being something that we are doing for a long period of time but have never previously communicated is the fact that we were recognized as a program champion. And what I'm really excited about is that as a part of our ESG strategy, product transparency is a leading pillar. And so this is an opportunity to really dig in and to communicate more with the consumers that are looking for this sort of information. Because we know that more than 50% of beauty shoppers are researching the attributes and the different sustainability components of the products they're buying. And if you're not communicating that information to them, they're going to shop elsewhere. So, how to evolve with the evolving consumer perceptions as it relates to sustainability. We want to remove barriers and make it easy. We want to build trust with those consumers, and we want to educate, inform, and empower them in this overwhelming time of information. So, I always love to lead with Thrive Market. Has anyone ever used Thrive Market? Awesome. So Thrive Market, to me, is a pioneer, not just in sustainability, but also in e-commerce. In the past 3 years, a lot of us have pivoted to shopping online, to ordering our groceries. But before that time, Thrive Market was one of the only places that people could go to shop for groceries outside of metro markets online. But what they did that's more important to this conversation is they made shopping for sustainable products super easy. They used simple iconography to make it so that their customers could go shop their values and pick a basket that was, 100% gluten-free if that's what they cared about, 100% kosher if that's the value that they were looking to shop. What's also important to note, or I guess I'll build upon anyway, is that they use third-party certifications. None of these are things that they came upon themselves. They relied on external bodies to classify that. They also have it where when you would go into any of these, you clicked through, you would come to a landing page, a shelf page we call it in retail, and that would show all the products that had this attribute and allowed somebody to build their basket along their values. So that's making it easy and removing barriers. Path to purchase. How do we build trust with the information that we have available to us on our products? We work with potential third parties to have an independent assessment of the work that we're doing, something that's objective to say, hey, we're doing something, it's independently assessed, and that builds credibility and transparency in a way us just patting ourselves on the back might not do. So there's generally 3 buckets when we think about that. We have multi-stakeholder certifications, which generally are partnerships with government or entities where you submit a packet to say, hey, we did this thing, and they'll stamp an approval to say, yep, we confirm you have those attributes. The second option is third-party certifications, and with that, you have a general nonprofit that has created a standard, and then another third party will go in and audit against it to say that you have met the criteria based on the audit to be able to carry that logo. The last option is a retailer or brand-created standard, something that's created in-house based on the criteria that you have identified, or whether it be an external counsel or an internal subject matter expert, to qualify products and different things that you as a brand stand for. So these obviously are beauty examples. So to bring it back to the room and maybe to make it a little bit more straightforward for our audience, what this would look like in the coffee space would be USD organic for multi-stakeholder, fair trade or rainforest if we were talking about third party, and then something like cafe practices if we were talking about a retailer or a brand standard. What we also know is that 77% of US consumers say that a third party certification is a trustworthy indicator for a product, and we see that 40% of European consumers see that third party certifications are a purchasing criteria when they're looking for sustainability products. So, leading with two different ways of approaching this, we have Ulta, a beauty retailer who has a program called Conscious Beauty. It is an in-house created program that they have used with 5 pillars. The 5 pillars are listed here, and each of these 5 pillars has simple iconography that they've created to designate what each of those pillars means to them. There's a simple definition on the landing page, and then once you click in, so example, we clicked in on clean ingredients, you'll go to a shelf page that elaborates further on how clean ingredients helps to fit into their strategy for Conscious Beauty. When they launched Conscious Beauty, it was a very big positive impact for the community. So it was, how can this product give back, almost in a philanthropic way? They've now pivoted to the point that was just made, really around better for you. How does this have a positive impact on me or my specific community? So really more of the clean ingredients and the formulation as compared to the overall product. What Ulta has done is clear and simple, used iconography to make it easy for the consumer to identify from afar, and provided definitions. One potential drawback of this approach is that it could be considered subjective. They created it in-house. So in comparison to that, we have the Amazon Climate Pledge Friendly program. So I built these slides a bit back, but for those of you that also are following what's going on in retail, Walmart actually launched this week in conjunction with Earth Day their Built for Better program, which follows the exact same model. So I'll speak to Amazon, but you can look that one up later. So if you were to go to Amazon, what you would see is that you search for coffee, and then underneath, products that qualify for Climate Pledge Friendly will have this green logo. And then if you were to click on one of those products, so let's say I clicked on the Death Wish coffee, underneath on the product description page, you have that logo again. So what the Climate Pledge Friendly program does is it helps consumers from Amazon shop for the products that they consider to be more sustainable, and it leans on third-party certifications to do so. So to mitigate risk and to eliminate the barrier that they are selecting things that they think are more climate friendly, they worked with third parties that validated that. So they started off by leaning on things like Energy Star or Carbon Trust or Carbon Neutral, third-party certifications that really looked at carbon or climate mitigation. They also designed their own program, which is called Compact by Design, which is very focused on furniture, but we won't go into that. And with this program, they really wanted to make it easy for their customers to shop. So it builds on the making it simple and leaning on building trust with third parties. What I think they kind of didn't do right from the beginning, though, is they really leaned into something that is being called carbon tunnel vision. So they were very focused on carbon emissions. It wasn't about the whole ecosystem of things that are actually causing climate change, whether that be something like deforestation. So the sequestration of carbon is being lessened because the trees are being cut down, therefore carbon is actually being released, and the impact that that has on humans or on water or any of those sorts of things, but just really zooming in on carbon and climate. As a result of that, and what we also are seeing in general, as you can see here, is that carbon labeled products, products that have those carbon labels have grown 3 times in the past 3 years, doubled, I'm sorry, in the past 3 years. And what I appreciate, though, is that Amazon kind of realized their mistake. They broadened it now, and what they have done is allowed for their program to include certifications that focus on all the different factors that really contribute to climate change. So things like fair trade, focusing on the human impact in a supply chain. Things like organic and how an organic production might be better for mitigating climate risk. And why this is important is that without that education, without that context, somebody could get really confused. And so the last piece is to really think about how to educate and arm consumers with the information necessary to really make and purchase with purpose in a way that they would like to. So in Climate Pledge Friendly, once you click through onto the product, you can then see the certifications that allow it to be qualified for the Climate Pledge Friendly program. In this case, Fair Trade and USD Organic, as I shared. It talks a little bit about the certification, and then it also talks a little bit about the Climate Pledge Friendly program, which actually builds on a multi-stakeholder thing that Amazon put up, which is called the Climate Pledge, which is that they will be net zero by 2040. If I polled the room, does anyone know what net zero means? A couple, okay, but not so many. And so what you can also do is when you click on Learn More, they educate their consumers on what mitigating their carbon emissions means and what net zero means. In the beauty space, there's a lot of conversation around free from and removing ingredients and formulated without. Sodium lauryl sulfate is something that is often in those conversations. And so this is an example from Colgate-Palmolive of them educating their consumers and arming them with the information to decide for themselves whether or not sodium lauryl sulfate is safe for them. For those of you that don't know, sodium lauryl sulfate is what's in toothpaste or something like shampoo. It is the moussing agent, but we don't often have that connection to chemistry. So if we wanted to take all of these pieces together, what would that look like in real life? We could see, looking at the USDA bio-based example I called out from our ESG report, that we could put a certified call out on our product shelf page. Once we clicked into certified, we would then see that the product logo had the bio-based certification. And then when we hovered over the formula over here, we could see that bio-based means that it's made with renewable materials. So it explains to the consumer actually what that certification is doing. So it's walking them through the steps, so it's kind of dummy-proof in a sense for them to really engage. So if we want to take a step back, and if you're looking to deliver diverse experiences to a community that has diverse tastes, lead with inclusivity, make it easy, remove those barriers and accessible for whomever you're speaking to. Be authentic and clear and explain the why. Why does it matter? Who are you speaking to? What is the importance of this in your supply chain or for your product or for your consumers? And build relationships, whether that be with your consumers, so you're having an authentic and trusting relationship, or with third parties. Lean on them to build that external validation of the work that you're doing to foster trust with your consumers and stakeholders. So with that, thank you for making it through.
Thank you, Mel. You gave us a lot of great information. Packed a lot into 18 minutes, and you finished right on time. Well done. Like I said, people, lots and lots of practice. So when I was looking at your slides before you presented today, and as I was listening to you, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the juxtaposition of third-party certifications and the sort of second-party verification, or these voluntary schemes that are owned by companies. I feel like I've been watching the push-pull of this in the coffee industry for like a long time, decades. And maybe fair trade and direct trade is an example of that a lot of people are going to be really familiar with in this audience. I know that you appreciate the differences between the approaches, but I wonder the degree to which you see that consumers appreciate and understand those differences.
Yeah, I think, and for those of you that don't know, so I used to work at Fair Trade. I think that's why Kim's saying that so much. But I would say that the consumer is, with anything else, ripe for education. So I think that this is an opportunity to really lean in further on whether it be direct trade or fair trade means, because I think both still have opportunity for growth. I think with fair trade, there's a halo effect, so it's a little bit more straightforward for the consumer. But I do believe that there is a opportunity in both areas that they're seen as positive, but there isn't a true understanding. And so by leading with education, there's an opportunity to really engage with your consumers in whatever way you're looking to.
I think that connects to a question that we got from the audience about, it just disappeared. There's something about tips. Okay, I'll pick another one. How can small businesses leverage the benefit of third-party certification when they all cost so much to maintain? That is a question I've heard before over the years.
That is a very good question. I think that from my perspective, there's an opportunity to potentially pick one. I don't think you have to have 10 certifications, but maybe you lean into organic, maybe you lean into fair trade, and you make that your core mission, and that's something where you can prioritize that in the budget, and I understand that's a difficult thing to say, but I think that when it's core to your values and it really is what your business stands for, then it's not an additional problem in the P&L, but something that you can make money for.
Yeah. Yeah, the next question that it popped back up, thank you for putting the question back, because I'm curious, anytime we can ask people who are, in your position, maybe you don't always feel like an expert, but in the context of this room, in the space you work in, you definitely are. If you have tips for differentiating sort of valid sustainability, whether that's third party or otherwise, from greenwashing, because saying here, businesses may be more trusted than government, but they're not necessarily always more trustworthy. So do you have any sort of tips either for businesses for how to differentiate, or even to the extent that we're all consumers, coffee, maybe also beauty products, like what are the things that you see that maybe we should look out for?
Yeah, I think that Cheryl actually teed this one up great. I think that what's most important to consider is leading with data. So it's great if you say, hey, this is more environmentally friendly, but why? Can you tell me that this, I don't know, tree was planted and there was less water used? Or can you tell me that it traveled less far to get to my house so that I could brew my cup of coffee? If you can actually provide that information, it's substantiated. And so being able to provide that substantiation beyond just saying some kind of qualitative fluff to the effect of having some kind of greenwashing challenge, I think can really go a long way. And so going back to some of the things that other speakers have spoken about, whether it be very big transparency and going something as far as blockchain, I'm not saying that's a solution or something that I'm personally in favor of, but you don't have to go that far. I think if you're just open and honest and authentic and using as much information as you have available and sharing that with your consumers, because if they care about that, they care about that and they're gonna ask the questions.
Yeah. I think, relatively recently in sustainability and coffee, we've started to talk a lot more about the impact of policy and legislation changes. For a lot of the time that I've spent working in sustainability, it seemed like it really has been incumbent upon businesses to lead because it was a wide open field. And now we have governments setting policy like the European Union deforestation regulation, and it's changed the kind of conversations we're having. And I wonder, is that true in the beauty space also? Are you all having conversations about policy changes, deforestation, human rights due diligence?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, agricultural raw materials make up a lot of the products that we use on a daily basis. So the deforestation law, for example, also impacts palm. It also impacts anything that we could say is like an oil. And those are things that we also are keeping in mind. But beyond that specific law, whether it be the climate disclosures that the SEC is putting out or the different laws that are coming out in Europe right now also on climate disclosure or human rights disclosure, is definitely on our radar, and it makes it even more prominent, the importance of data, because bad data in, bad data out. So it's really important to have systems in place to start to think about how you're communicating that to not only your consumers, but also things like a legislative or regulatory body.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question to that, which is maybe, sort of crossing my fingers and hoping, is any of that conversation or is any of the work being done like pre-competitively or between companies? Do you see people sharing strategies and being open about it, or are people sort of approaching this as yet another area for competitive advantage and trying to kind of keep things close?
That's a really good question. My personal opinion is that I believe businesses like my own, at least in my space, are working with industry organizations. So I see a lot of the industry associations that we're members of. We're coming together pre-competitively to discuss, because that's what our membership groups are for. So something like SCA might be the same for coffee. How we can together face these sorts of challenges, because they're new to everybody. It's not just one business that's victim to them. Yeah. We all have to respond. And I think that being able to respond in the same way is super important, so that one of us isn't getting caught in a place that we don't want to be.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow as it applies to coffee. Okay, so the last question, and again, it feels like a little bit of a different take on questions we've already had, but I think that this is a really compelling topic, is how does this work for consumers, this idea of differentiation, when it seems like there's such a, like the quote here, sea of sameness? when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, I like that term as well. I've never heard that, but I would say this goes back to what does your business stand for, who you are, and then being true to kind of your values or your messaging or your communication. So if you're a brand that says you're community driven, then you can be sustainability community driven. And just, I think carrying that tenet throughout is really important, and it really can read authentically. When you kind of just dabble and you don't go deep or you don't explain how this aligns with what your business means or cares about, I think that's when it becomes a sea of sameness. And then, yeah, you're just stamping and checking the box.
Yeah, so something there about making trade-offs and being authentic and yeah, communicating really intentionally and clearly, and probably saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, because the things that you carry core to your business, you're going to say day in and day out. You're not just going to use Earth Day as the time to talk about your sustainability initiatives. It'll be every day.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mel.
Yeah.